Hello, it's Bob Pandolfo, and this is kind of a follow-up on my last video about handicapping harness racing and the horses that are coming from off the pace. I mentioned Mohawk. Hoosier Park's not racing yet, but Mohawk also uses the Trackus system to call the charts. So I wanted to look at this race. This is from Saturday, February 19th at Woodbine Mohawk, which is run at the Mohawk track, which is a 7/8 track. They go around twice. I'm sorry, they go around two turns, so they go around the track once, and it has a very long stretch. So Mohawk is a good track because, first of all, the racing's good, the drivers are good, and they have that long stretch, which is really very helpful because harness racing, being so much more speed favoring than it used to be, it's just a big advantage to have a long stretch. And these 7/8 tracks, the way they're designed, usually do have a long stretch, and you do it in Mohawk. So Mohawk, and especially during the winter with the colder temperatures, um, you're going to get more off the pace winners, and especially at a track like this. So let's just look at this race. Now, here you can see that they went 28 to the quarter, and then the second quarter was slow. So the half was slow, 57-2. Now that's not really that unusual, especially during the winter at Mohawk, because being that the closers do pretty well there, the drivers aren't always, that intent on going fast early. They're trying to save something for the stretch, for that long stretch. But a race like this makes it very difficult for the closers because of the slow pace. So the horse that wins is a horse that leaves and sits the pocket. He sits behind this horse. Let's get pickled. This is very common in harness racing. A lot of leavers win. In this particular case, the 4 horse had no excuse. He was pretty bad here. He set pretty easy pace. The 5 horse though managed to get out in the stretch. So he was shuffled a little bit here, but you have that long stretch, so he got out and he won. In a race like this, the horses that are close up are more likely to finish close up at the finish. So, for instance, this horse is first over, and this horse, Sportsline, is second over. But let's look at the horses that were further back. Now, these horses are really at a big disadvantage, and this is where I mentioned Trackus. If you look at the quarter here, you could see that there are horses 13 lengths back, like this horse, Captain Video. This horse, Ray's Credit, is 15 lengths back, actually 15 1/4. Respect Our Flag is 17 1/4 lengths back, right? Now that, if you look at tracks where they have somebody calling the charts themselves, which most tracks do, most tracks don't use this Trackus electronic timing, you very rarely see these horses that far back because they're not calling the lanes in between each horse correctly, as I mentioned in my last video. But here you can see, like in harness racing, sometimes these horses are so far back, it's unbelievable. So these 3 horses, the 8, the 9, 10, they have absolutely no chance. I mean, not even a remote. It just it isn't going to happen. You would have to have like Nia Trust. You'd have to be like Nia Trust to win this race from out here. And I don't even know if he'd be able to win. I mean, the pace is so slow. They came the last half in 55-4, which is so much faster than the first half, which was 57-2. So these horses, they're out, and of course they have posts 8, 9, and 10. That's the big problem in harness racing, is that the outside posts don't do well, especially when they don't leave. And in this particular race, these horses didn't leave, and then the pace was slow. They had no chance. So now let's look at the horse that kind of came from a pretty tough spot here, and that's Highland Beach Lover. And you can see he's 11 lanes back, then he's 8 lanes back. He's following cover. Now, at the half, he doesn't have good cover. You see this horse, Traker Hanover, is 5th. He doesn't, have much. So this horse, Highland Beach Lover, is stuck behind him. But then Traker Hanover drops in, cuts back into the inside because the driver realizes he doesn't have much. And this horse kind of, comes up and catches these other horses, and he ends up in somewhat of a flow here. Although this third quarter, this is misleading too. It looks like he just goes 7-6, like he doesn't do much. But actually, this was a pretty difficult third quarter for him because you can see he's gaining three lanes. He's 8 1/4 lanes back. Then he's 5 1/2 lanes back here. So he gained nicely, even though he only went from 7 to 6. And don't forget, this horse ducked in. So he had to catch up to horses. He was kind of racing with nobody in front of him for a while here. And then he comes into the stretch and he finishes fastest than anybody with this 26 3 last quarter. So his last half was pretty damn good. I think, let's see, 28 1, 27 3, and 26 3, 54 1, 54. So he came home his last half in 54 1. He really didn't have a chance to win this race, and this is what I like to look for. Now here's a horse who gained at every call. He's 11 lanes, then he's 8 lanes, then he's 5 lanes, then he's 3 lanes, then he's 1 length off, right? He's gaining all the way. And this is a lot harder than it looks, going here from, it looks like he's going from 7 to 6, like it's no big deal, but it is, because he's 11 lanes back here, and here he's 6 lanes, he's 5 lanes back. So during the middle half of this race, he's gaining, and that takes energy. And then he has a lot left. And he has absolutely no chance to win this race because the pace is so slow. I mean, when I say it has absolutely no chance, I mean, if he was a monster, I guess he could have won the race. I mean, if he came home in 26 1, he would have won the race. But I mean, you know what I'm saying? That's not that easy to do, especially during the winter. Don't forget, he went a 54 1 last half in the winter on a colder night. He was 16 1. So this looks like this horse is set for a good race coming out of here, especially if he gets a decent post. Now, of course, if he gets post 6 again, he may have a chance to win if there's more speed in the race. But ideally, you'd like to see him get a better post so he can, get right into the race. But again, I'm just pointing out here that these trips these off the pace trips in harness racing now are a lot harder than they look. A lot harder than they look, because it's that's not the way the races are won. Now Mohawk again is more of a closer's track compared to most harness tracks, but still, with these long bikes and everything, and the speed favoring nature of these bikes, and how far back the horses are, it is a disadvantage to race off the pace. And you have to take that consideration. So this race is a lot better than it looks on paper. That'll do it for this particular handicapping tip. Thanks for listening.